Great, thanks, Janice. Yeah, it seems like it was yesterday that we were sitting in this room in the Hilton with about a dozen people saying, could we actually come together as a community? Is there a role for something like ALDconnect? Do we even need an organization that tries to bring together patients, patient advocates, physicians, scientists, and industry? So my role in the next 20, 30 minutes will be to try to get everybody up to speed on how we got here and what the purpose of ALDconnect is. And many of you already have heard this, but I think some people are new here and we want to make sure we're on the same page and talk about what progress we've made, what obstacles we also face, and what may lie ahead. And this is really just to start the discussion. By no means is this set in stone. So let me see if I'm pointing at, okay, there we go. So as I was thinking about this meeting and saying, how to summarize where we are and what we still need to go forward with, I thought, what's better than having patients and patient stories actually speak to that? And this is a family I take care of in Boston. 2 boys. The older boy diagnosed first with advanced cerebral disease, sadly too far advanced for bone marrow transplantation to have an effect. But through his diagnosis, his younger brother was also diagnosed with ALD, and an early lesion was found, and he was successfully treated with gene therapy, and now 2-3 years out, he's attending soccer camps and comes and tells me stories about his superheroes that he likes. So the point I'm trying to make here is we've made progress for some patients, but progress is really incomplete. There are many patients, advanced cerebral ALD, patients with AMN who we still don't have treatments for. I don't know, Dean. Probably going to let you change slides. Okay. So we rally around an unmet need. Approximately 5,000 AMN patients right now, men and women in the US currently have no treatments. This year, 40 boys in the US will undergo bone marrow transplantation. A third will be too advanced for optimal transplant. Another 20 boys in the US this year will not even have any treatment options because of the severity of cerebral ALD. So these are huge challenges, and I think what we need to understand is while this is a disease that is defined by a single gene mutation, there are different phenotypes, and so far we're only making inroads in some stages of certain phenotypes, but not progress for many others. So we need to think of this. And just last night I heard about another trial development for advanced cerebral ALD, so I'm very excited about seeing some progress happen here. And then newborn screening, right? What a breakthrough. Recommended in the US, but poor disease awareness persists, and centers and patients seek guidance. So a huge challenge that lies ahead for us in the coming years is how do we actually spread disease awareness? How do we come up with common guidelines, how to follow people, and help the many physicians who might be seeing ALD for the first time? Next. So the mission of ALDconnect is to improve medical care outcomes for patients with ALD, advancing scientific knowledge, raising awareness, improving education. In short, we really are aiming together to eradicate ALD. The whole notion here is that we need to do this together. We need to do this in cooperation. We really are aiming to transform this field of ALD by creating a network of people who can listen to each other and work together. So this is a nice slide from Keith Van Haren, who visualized this whole process. There's ALDconnect with clear patient centricity, but trying to really harmonize and bring together the physician perspective, the clinical trial consortium part, and online patient network, and establishing crosstalk between the two. And this really allowing for active partnerships between patient advocate groups, physician scientists, centers of excellence, and ultimately industry and drug development. So we all understand that recognizing the patient perspective and bringing patient's influence into research priorities is going to accelerate things. And I think we are in a pretty unique situation with this disease in this field. There are very few rare disease groups where you can actually have all the centers working together in the same room and really bringing all the different advocacy organizations together. So I think a big advantage that we should try to harness and build on. So we asked ourselves, do we have everybody here in the room who shares the common goal of wanting to improve in ALD and ultimately eradicate this disease? Patient and advocates, we asked, how can we together make your lives better? How can you also make a difference? We don't want patients to be simply objects of study, a subject of a research study. We want them to be active participants and set the priorities of the research. We want to understand whether what we're studying is really making a difference to them. Academics, we asked, how can we make your clinic, your research more successful? And for industry, really, we wanted to be one-stop shopping. So we wanted to be the place where companies could meet patient advocates, as well as physician experts and scientists, and help them accelerate their drug development by providing this platform. So many patient organizations that came together were not only ALD related, but also overarching many of the leukodystrophies. As you saw, we have Dean and Taryn here from the MLD Foundation. Also FARA, Friedreich's Ataxia Research Alliance. We really want to learn from others. That's the goal here too, is we don't have to always reinvent the wheel. If there are other people other organizations who know how to do something, we want to build on that and exchange knowledge and cooperate to make things move faster. Next. So the academic institutions so far that are part of this are in the US, Stanford, University of Utah, Johns Hopkins, Kennedy Krieger, University of Minnesota, MGH, and Harvard. And then we actively collaborate also with the Amsterdam Medical Center. Very nice to have Irene here. And we've started this year also working with groups in Argentina and the Austral Hospital in Buenos Aires, thinking that we really have common challenges across the world in this rare disease, and we need to do this together in order to address the rarity of this patient population. If we can't standardize, harmonize across multiple centers across the world, there is no way we're going to bring together the numbers that are really needed to assess power and whether we're making a difference and dent in this disease. Next. So how do we actually work together in ALDconnect? We have a board of directors. We have work groups, as Janice mentioned before. The work groups are dedicated to everything from infrastructure governance and funding to outcome measures to disease mechanisms and candidate therapeutics in work group 3, and then very importantly work group 4, talking about how to disseminate ALD-related information, raising awareness. The whole idea here is that we engage in collaborative discussions. We strive for consensus, not simply rule by majority. We might, at the end of a long discussion, agree to disagree, but I think it's important that we have different perspectives that we bring into these calls and into these meetings. If we are all thinking the same thing, then something's missing. We need to have all voices heard and be all-inclusive. And I think that's something that we should never be complacent about and continue to think, are there other perspectives that are not yet included in ALDconnect? Next. So this is the board of directors, about 2/3 physician scientists and a third patient advocates, and we're actively looking for new members of the board that might represent new perspectives that we don't currently have. And then, of course, importantly, having sponsors. Part of our early success of ALDconnect after the kickoff meeting in 2014 was that we got a PCORI grant where we were funded as one of 18 patient-powered research networks across the US. We had established an bank account independent of academic institutions, so this was important for buy-in from various different institutions in order to show our independence. We weren't simply governed by one single academic with institution with its overhead, but had an independent bank account. And we, after our first phase 1 of PCORI, industry support kicked in with Bluebird Bio, Genzyme Vertex, Biogen, and more recently Neurovia. So fantastic to see that. Philanthropy, individual donations have also made a big point. Synergistic with this, I think there have been academic efforts that have been facilitated through ALDconnect, career development awards, clinical trial readiness grants. We put in a first multi-center U1 grant that was not funded on the first round, but we were invited to the reapply and got a good score. And there's some other grants by Kathleen Sakowski that are still pending review. We conducted different meetings, a biomarker summit that really brought together many industry participants. As many of you from industry know, a key question for drug development is, do we have good biomarkers for target engagement? Can some of them even be potential surrogate markers for outcome? And can this crucial piece of information be added and help companies develop new drugs for ALD and AMN? Next. I think a key part of what we've been doing in ALDconnect is trying to have the patient's voice be heard, and that's an ongoing process and work in progress. We're by no means doing this well enough, but we're starting with patient learning academies that were conducted in Boston, in Omaha, and in Texas. You know, these really allowed people to have discussions, as we hopefully will be having here tomorrow as well, on what is important to patients, what are the priorities that they have, what are we missing as we physicians and scientists and companies work towards developing drugs together. What is the most meaningful thing that we could influence that might lead to FDA approval of a drug? And really also bringing in different perspectives, AMN patients trying on walking devices, young ALD patients sharing their experiences. We had a group called the Young ALD Carriers that really showed to have themselves to have a very independent and strong voice. So that was wonderful. Next, Steve. Very nice patient learning academy that Brian Chandler organized in Austin, Texas, and I think a point that he made is there were really some families there that had just been diagnosed and were able to, through this patient learning academy, to meet each other and share some of their grief, but also bond and find support. And I think that's tremendously meaningful. And to see them take their journey together and have support and someone to lean on in the difficult days that they face is something that we as a community should take absolutely seriously. So on an infrastructure side, we have been very lucky to have had Alex Sherman and his group at MGH help us leverage some of the knowledge over the years that a group in ALS called Northeast ALS has developed, and they have a repository called Neurobank that they shared the infrastructure with us, and he'll be talking about that shortly in more detail. So beyond having physicians enter online information and standardizing and harmonizing outcomes across different centers, we also want the patient's voice and patient's perspective. So we created a patient portal, and I think this opening image on the patient portal says it all. Who knows the most about adrenoleukodystrophy? You do. And the idea here is that we really need to have patients track their neurological function as well. We need to hear from them what is most important to them. And through Neurobank and through the global unique identifier that Alex will talk about, we have an ability to harmonize and compare perspectives from physicians as well as from patients. So I'm the one standing here talking, but the people who are doing the hard work are members of project management, and Kaylee Walsh, who organized this meeting and has recently also become project manager of the Center for Rare Neurological Diseases, Elizabeth Haxton, who's organizing the calls, work group 3 and work group 4, and Rachel, who's recently joined and helping in this process as well. Next. So I think the goal of ALDconnect is to establish trial readiness by bringing all perspectives together, by understanding what is important to patients, and also addressing the gaps that might be within this pipeline to drug development. Some phenotypes, some certain indications may lack a good assay model system. There might be not enough natural history data. There might be other indications where there's no industry partner for something that's vital to patients, or we're missing certain outcome measures. So we want to together think about where the gaps are and how can we bring partners together to close those. Next. So I think since 2013, in our first kickoff meeting in Boston, we've been steadily growing as a community. I think some of the strength and momentum has really come from different groups showing an interest. Clearly, newborn screening and certain trials kicking off have given us a spark, and one of the challenges is how to sustain growth and how to sustain momentum in this rare disease field. Yeah. So another thing we added last year was an industry advisory council. Why did we do this? We recognized companies needed access to patients, resources, and knowledge. They needed to build relationships with all the players along the therapy development pathway. Companies are always asking ourselves, how can we de-risk programs well downstream? And on the other hand, ALDconnect needs complementary knowledge, needs regulatory guidance. It's one of the things we physician scientists don't know. We don't know how to really bring drugs to market. And we also need financial support. So I think there's been good synergy in this industry advisory council that is separate from ALDconnect, and we really see this as companies guiding this process and governing this council themselves, but with clear connections to the overall community here. So we've had multiple different companies involved: AGTC, Biogen, Bluebird, Vertex, Minorix, Deuterex, Neurovia. I think Genzyme, I didn't find a photograph of James Lilly. And I couldn't resist putting Kendrick in here with his bicycle helmet, so forgive me for that. So the Industry Advisory Council, as I said, is independent, meets every 3 months in Boston. The idea is that there's great proximity to all the companies that are in the Boston area. They often just have to walk across the bridge to meet with some of the physician scientists, and we always have the meetings where people are hearing from a patient or patient advocate first, and then bringing topics of interest to industry. This has creates a workflow and a flow of information, I'd say, where this feeds back to the board. We're still working on how we can have projects move from Industry Advisory Council to board to work groups and back to Industry Advisory Council, and clearly something we're thinking about actively. So what progress have we made to date? As Janice said, I mean, a huge milestone, much due to the work of Elisa Seeger, and that's really changed our field to get the ALD newborn screening added to the RUSP. Entering year 3 for New York State, Connecticut, and California now coming on board. We've had first gene therapy for ALD, an ex vivo lentiviral gene therapy trial that was just reported out in the spring. There are new insights into pathophysiology, understanding how ABCD1 may be influencing different cell types like the endothelium and Dr. Mussolino's work, and new model systems, Dr. Bunkowski developing zebrafish model. So I think there's been a lot happening on basic science end, but probably the most exciting thing is upcoming trials for AMN and the great interest of industry right now. I mean, 5 years ago, who would have thought we would be here with so many companies being interested in developing treatment for ALD and AMN? And I think that's that's created a tremendous amount of excitement, but I think it also raises certain challenges and questions of how can we work together, and this is what ALDconnect as a community has to come together to address. So there are unmet needs in both men and women with ALD. I put up a picture here of a wonderful family I follow in Boston with brothers and sisters affected by AMN. Interestingly, the men had childhood cerebral ALD, but stabilized and self-halted on their own. We still don't know the answer to why 15% of boys who have cerebral ALD self-halt, and why others go on to have such a ferocious, terrible course. Importantly, all the women are having active problems due to AMN, and I think that's an often very overlooked part of our community and something we should pay much more attention to. And can women benefit from drugs developed for AMN men? And should we actually bring that into the whole discussion and really help our community by pointing to other targets that we need drug development around? And I think one of the things that ALDconnect should not overlook is the families, the community itself, and the resilience that some of these families have. And I'm always impressed with that in my clinic, that some families have the ability to strengthen, support each other, and we need to think about what patients can teach us. And I would love to think a little bit outside the box of how to do that. So technological advances enable progress. We've had great success with biomarker discovery. Clearly, very long-chain fatty acids and the assay were a milestone in this field. But we now need tools to assess for genetic and environmental modifiers. We need to understand why certain patients convert to cerebral ALD, why some of them halt on their own, what determines how severe your disease is, and with AMN, what determines the rate of progression, and other modifiers here that we could have biomarkers for. MR technology clearly has made a big difference for cerebral ALD. We can detect lesions in the brain. We can monitor the lesion progression. How do we do this for AMN? And that's an active part of our upcoming U01 grant. And cell-based therapies and gene correction have, in the last few years, really taken off. And we now have the ability to reconstitute bone marrow. We can use viral vectors to enable gene transfer, to immediately transduce cells. These are things that, in 100 years have not been possible. So we're at a time in history that we've never been at before. And we have online tools, we have social media, we can reach out through Facebook, patient portal. Development, I think, is something that we should actively explore and see how we can make use of some of these communication tools. Next slide. At the same time, I want to point out that this technological progress is offset by three fundamental problems. One is risk. Often we cannot foresee the ends of inventions in advance. We cannot know whether the experimental treatments we have or are developing now are of only benefits, and what, if there are risks, what those are. We may know that there are things we don't know, but we may also not know that there are things that are unknown. So how do we address that? How do we prepare for that? There's inequality, there's uneven distribution of benefits. Not everybody has access to drugs, to medicine. Many people don't have access to diagnostic assays. There's newborn screening that's not going to be available for everybody. And then there's the question, of course, of control and governance in this whole process of technological progress, and who is actually making the decisions, and how can we have patients and the patient voice be heard, and human dignity actually preserved in this process. So I think this is where the role of community and joint discourse in ALDconnect is so hugely important. Next slide. So as an example, downsides of reliance on MRI. Many of the MRI protocols across the country are not standardized. The interpretation is limited to a few experts who are not large in number. Analysis of early lesion is crucial in the decision making, and I'm obviously worried that we're going to be receiving a lot of MRIs that are misinterpreted. As an example, I'm showing you here on the left a completely normal brain of a 2-year-old where parts of the myelin of the white matter are still under development, but that's completely normal. That's not an abnormal lesion, as opposed to what you see in cerebral ALD, where you have a lesion within the center of the corpus callosum that has contrast enhancement. So we need to think about more than just expert silos of knowledge. We need to think, how can we spread awareness around how MRIs are interpreted, and how we then appropriately pull the triggers for treatment. Because a boy who just has appropriate delay in ongoing myelination should not be treated with a bone marrow transplantation, as opposed to that boy who has an early lesion and contrast enhancement should. The other caveats also around experimental treatments, such as gene correction and multimodal therapy. I'm very excited about gene therapy today, but I also think, how do we predict adverse events? How do we prepare for the vulnerability of an impaired nervous system? How are we going to treat boys who have advanced cerebral ALD, who may not tolerate treatment the same way that boys tolerated who have early disease? And do we have rules for advancing serial or concomitant therapy? Do we know how to, now with multiple treatments coming along, to stagger them or to use them simultaneously? And that may be something we should be thinking about as a community as well. Next. The risks of social media and online tools. A lot of people talk about privacy issues around social media, and I think that's nothing particular to ALD, but as we embark on having an online community, it's something we have to think about. Some of the advantages of social media are clear, but at the same time there's also fragmentation, loss of community. Some scientists at Harvard talk about bowling alone, people who want to stay home and engage in television rather than be part of a community, and there may be some of the online resources and social media tools are not allowing us to come together as a community and make life as meaningful and have social ties that we want to have here together. I've been talking to some people on the board about, we have wonderful opportunities around webinars and everything that Dean is here doing for us, and live streaming, but is there a loss of in-person meeting attendance, and how does that change how we think of our community here? Next. So inequality is something that we encounter across the world, and Patricia Mussolino and I attended a meeting in Argentina, and part of when we were describing what the MGH leukodystrophy clinic looks like, some of the parents said, well, that sounds like science fiction to us. We have a very different world. We are happy if we can get a diagnosis. Our cousin, our nephew is hundreds of miles away, and we don't know how they will, find access to a doctor who can perform an assay for very long-chain fatty acids. On the other hand, I think we have a lot to learn from other communities around the world, the kind of strength and support that families have in taking care of their loved ones, and uncles and aunts and other family members coming together and being close-knit, something we should learn from. Next. So inequality is clearly not just something that we see in outside of the US. We have inequality within our country itself, uneven distribution of benefits, uneven access to diagnostic assays. Newborn screening will roll out state by state. Few expert centers with poor coverage across the country. We need to have more centers. We need to have more experts who are taking care of patients with ALD. Trials so far serve a minority of patients. We need to go beyond cerebral ALD in its early stages and have trials for AMN and for advanced cerebral ALD, which is now upcoming. Next. So maybe some of the hardest questions I'm putting up here, which is questions around human dignity and self-determination. I think as a community, as a rare disease, we don't want to be just the subject of technological progress. We have to be more than just believing in technical determinism. How can we have all voices heard? How can we ensure patient control and governance in a changing world? Can we create a forum to provide guidance to patients and navigate potential risks and benefits as new treatments arrive? Can we reflect on rules governing multimodal treatment? We are going to have treatments that are going to upregulate related genes for ALD. We're going to have some treatments that are going to correct ALD or overexpress ABCD1 itself. As a community, can we write guidelines and recommendations for patients, for companies, for FDA, to understand the large unmet need, but also how to come together where there might be concomitant treatments? Next. So what lies ahead? We clearly have to improve infrastructure and governance, and that, in my mind, lies largely within project management, and I'm happy to have a team that's learning and growing. We need to have more patient engagement and outreach. We have to address the many new geographies and areas where also newborn screening is rolling out. The challenges are not just technological, they're also social, political in this day and age, where we need to learn how to be listening partners. How can we listen to people who may not agree with us, and how can we have interactive dialogues? Clearly, we're standardizing outcomes across current centers within our U1. We need to have new centers of excellence, as I mentioned before, and we want to learn from other groups like FARA, NEALS, and bring in new perspectives and resources. Dean? Patients could further accelerate impact. We need patient families not to be just participants in trials, but to really drive, as so many of you here, like Elisa and Janice have done, adoption of newborn screening in each state. We need the ALD community to help define how to best engage and to participate in upcoming clinical studies, and help us prioritize the focus. And I think I was talking to Amber Saltzman about what is really missing in our community, and I think it's really that shout out to patients that we need your skills. We need you to understand that you can accelerate impact, and if you want to make a difference, please join and become leaders in this community as well. So I want to close with just a story of how patient experience and input is vital. Here's pictures of another family I follow, Sarah and Dylan, who Dylan went through bone marrow transplantation, sadly in a quite advanced state, and stabilized, but now does not speak and is blind, but shares many precious moments with his mother, as you can see in these pictures, particularly below. And the mother herself is fighting AMN symptoms and has had gait problems, bladder problems, but recently came to my clinic saying, "Oh, I have a lot of restless leg at night and feels like bugs are biting my feet and my legs." And we tried some ropinirole, and she came back a few weeks later saying that she's sleeping so much better now, and her legs aren't troubling her at night, and her balance has so much improved. And I thought to myself, there are really opportunities to learn from patients' experience and patients' input on a daily basis, and we should not always think that we know the right path forward, and make use of that patient input that's so vital. So sorry, hope I didn't go too long, but it just sort of set the stage for, I think, the kinds of discussions that we should have today. Thank you.